Unscheduled session to discuss a new fast-moving and dangerous wildfire that has broken out. This is the most significant new wildfire in Southern California since January 7th or 8th, when the devastating Palisades and Eaton fires broke out. This is a fire near Lake Castaic in LA County. It's rapidly approaching the I-5 corridor. It's called the Hughes Fire. It's already between 5 and 10,000 acres, so it's exploded. There are red flag conditions in effect. In fact, winds are expected to strengthen into high wind warning territory once again tonight. Vegetation in the area is at record dry levels. Here we go again. I'm actually going to switch over immediately to sharing my screen because there is some extraordinary footage coming in right now from live helicopters and this is again right now. Let's see. I have two different news helicopter feeds up right now. What I believe you're seeing right now, I just want to make sure, yes. So what you're seeing right now, well, for some reason the cameras on these live footage, they always cut to the tanker drops, which I understand are dramatic, but it's not really the most important part of the screen. Anyway, so this is, again, this fire is right up, it's burned right up to the lake, and there was hope this was going to act as a big fire break, but there are reports that the fire has already spotted to the other side of Lake Castaic. This fire is moving northeast to southwest approximately, or east to west. It was east of the lake. It's mostly still east of the lake, but there may be a portion of it west of the lake. At this point, given the extreme fire behavior we're seeing, I think it probably will either make its way around either the north or south ends of the lake, or both, or just spot right across it. That puts it immediately into neighborhoods. You can see the spotting. Look at that spot fire taking off. Again, this is live. You can see how quickly. So you see that spot fire was nothing about 5 seconds ago, and now it's like a 2-acre fire with flames 30 or 40 feet tall, and it's just spreading uphill. That's what you're up against. So when you wonder why fire crews can't respond quickly enough, look at this. Okay, so the other thing we're seeing is that there is a major fire whirl that has developed in this vicinity. You can actually see it starting to further redevelop. Okay, so it looks like this right now may be the middle of a pretty significant fire vortex of some intensity. You can kind of see that the winds are converging here and here on this hill slope. There's upward motion, and it's a little bit hard to tell from this vantage point, but the helicopter footage is showing something. It's a little bit less dramatic at the moment, but there was this pretty clearly defined vortex in there a minute ago. I'm not sure if we can see it right now, but the general sense of what you're getting is this is a fast moving, although winds are not extreme, they are elevated, they are strong. There are 20 to 30 miles an hour winds right now with gusts to 40. That is expected to increase in the coming hours to gusts to 50 to 60. There is a red flag warning once again in effect. This is the problem, is that even if you catch 98% of the fires initially when they're very small, as has happened in recent days, the one that gets away in the bad place at the wrong time, it's off to the races again, and that's where we are right now. You can see the wind-driven spread in this footage right now. Toggling around to see if there's better angle on the vortex that was occurring earlier. Sometimes these are intermittent, so it isn't necessarily contiguous, but look at all those spot fires. I mean, you can just see they're just sort of all over the place. You can see how receptive the vegetation is, how extremely dry it is, and how easily this fire is spotting across the landscape. So again, firefighters are using Lake Castaic itself as a big fire break feature, but this is a wind-driven fire in extremely dry fuels. Spotting is a main concern, and yes, it could spot all the way across the lake. It was reported to have done so earlier. They may have caught that spot, but I don't know if that's going to hold. The lake is narrower on its northern flank, and I think what I'm going to do is, so you get the sense of the scale here. So, you can see those vehicles on the side of the road, and you can see that the length of the flames. You can see a little fire whirl there. This is a very active fire being driven primarily in this direction by the wind. So you can see this is spotting right across roadways. showing no signs of slowing down. You could see later strong winds, unfortunately, return. That's right now. So we do have those gusts up to about 40 miles an hour right now. This is going to be a problem. Let me quickly make sure that everything is going right on this side of things. Yes. Okay. So let me bring up watch duty for anybody who's concerned about evacuations. There are evacuations. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So again, here is it's the Hughes Fire. This footprint is old. This was 5,000 acres. That's out of date. I think this fire is probably closer to 10,000 acres now. Again, it started here to the northeast of Lake Castaic. It's mostly still on the east side, but as you can see, it's trying to sneak around the south side, and the north end of the lake is pretty narrow, so unfortunately it won't be that hard for this to spot across the lake here. So my prediction, they may catch the southern side of the fire once it starts to hit the neighborhoods here, but I think this side is going to blow right across the lake or go around the northern end. We are probably going to have some fire in all likelihood making it to about the I-5 corridor and maybe to the west. So there are evacuations now for the I-5 corridor. This includes the north side. I think that's, let me zoom in a little bit. That may be the north side of Castaic. Oh, so actually that's the north side of Santa Clarita. Excuse me. So there are evacuation warnings down to the 126. And I think here is one of my personal concerns. This fire is one that I think, unfortunately, given the location, the conditions, and the predicted winds tonight increasing, this one has legs. There is a chance that this fire will make it into Ventura County. And this is not a good place to have a fire under northeast winds because there is a almost contiguous, very dense fuel bed all in this region. So unfortunately, this fire has the potential to become very large under these conditions. The key question is, does it make it to the west of Castaic and or to the west of I-5? Those are really the only two opportunities to potentially stop this before it spreads very far in this direction under strong northeasterly winds. So we're probably going to know pretty soon whether that happens, whether they're able to do it, because this thing is already trying to spot across. And as you can see, there are red flag warnings. Actually, that you can't see that right now. In any case, I just want to double check. This is the only fire of note right now, so it's going to continue to be the one that I'm talking about. I'm going to go back to the live footage. We're going to keep switching back and forth. So you can see where this is relative to the lake. You can see that it's aggressively approaching the lake. Here is where it's trying to flank the lake in this direction. So technically it could come around the lake and hook around through the neighborhood. I hope it doesn't, because that means it would burn through structures. They may end up catching it on this side, but I am more concerned with the northern flank, and that's the side of the fire we can't see from this angle from the helicopter footage. So here is what it looks like on the satellite view right now. Big black spot, obvious location for this fire. If we turn on the visible satellite, there are some cirrus clouds around, so these wispy clouds moving eastward. These are benign cirrus clouds, but if you can see carefully the smoke plume blowing from east to west here, this is where the Hughes Fire is. So I'm going to bring back the infrared. And as you can see, as a general indicator of fire intensity, I do not see this thing decreasing in intensity. In fact, if you look at the circle, it's becoming slightly larger and darker, which is an indication that the size and intensity of the fire continues to increase. Well, the radar, do we see it? We sure do. Here's the plume. And you can see the wind direction. It's primarily blowing smoke. So if you're seeing smoke down the Santa Clara River, in Fillmore or Santa Paula or Ventura or Oxnard, this smoke right now is coming from pretty far away. However, this fire may still manage, well, actually, excuse me, so the fire is, I think this map projection is a little bit off. The fire is actually up here. Here's the lake. It is still supposedly on the east side of I-5, so this is a little bit misleading, excuse me. I think the fire's here. I think it's just detecting the plume here, partly because it's so windy that it's getting bent down by the wind. That's not really a good sign. I do expect the fire to probably cross that. All right, let's take a look at the footage again. I'm mainly interested in the helicopter aerials versus the on-the-ground footage, since I think that gives you a better sense of what's going on. So on the left there, the lower left, you can kind of see this is the tilted plume. That is an indication that this is a wind-driven fire, which is not really what we want to see. That's not good news. Smoke rising straight up would look more dramatic from far away, but it would actually be a slightly more manageable fire. This is not that. So at this time, the wind is strong, but not so strong that air support can't fly. So there are obviously, you've seen them, air tankers on this fire. There are helicopters. That's the good news. The bad news is it is going to get windy enough later that they may not be able to fly in the moments when it gets closest to communities. That is really not good news. So this is definitely the fire that concerns me the most of this January outbreak in Southern California, aside from the Palisades and the Eaton before it. This is a much more concerning fire than the other numerous small fires that have broken out and ultimately been contained. This one is already probably around 10,000 acres. And as I've reflected before, I think the time to 10,000 acres is a good metric of the dangerousness of the fire and the extremity of the conditions. And this is yet another fire that has become a 10,000 plus acre fire very, very quickly. I know the screen says 5,000 plus, but that's an old update. It was confirmed at 5,000 plus about an hour ago before it clearly continued to spread aggressively. So I'm going out on a pretty conservative limb and saying probably over 10 at this point. Again, you can really see from the helicopter footage that this is a wind-driven fire. You can see the wind is causing it to hopscotch forward, so there's some contiguous spread like this, but there's also spot fires hopping along like this, and this is what causes it to jump the roads. You can see a firefighting bulldozer there trying to widen this fire road, but honestly, under these conditions, maybe they'll have some luck because this is sort of flanking the main direction of spread, but I don't know. Under these conditions, they're probably going to have more luck working on the heel of the fire, trying to get that out so it doesn't spread in those directions. But in this direction of wind-driven spread, I think this is verging on being one that they're not going to be able to stop. They're going to have to wait for the fuel to run out or for conditions to improve. You really do get a sense. I mean, this is a way zoomed out view, but look at the size of these flames. You know, it just gives you a sense of why you can't just, even as a firefighter with equipment, you can't just walk into one of these canyons and try and start digging a trench. That would be an unacceptably dangerous mission. See a fire whirl there? So this thing is just producing fire whirl after fire whirl. To clarify, fire tornadoes are different than fire whirls. Fire whirls are a lesser, if you will, swirly phenomena within a fire. However, they're still dangerous. And when they occur with this frequency, it is an indication that the fire is just burning very hot and actively under pretty gusty wind conditions. There's lots of local wind shear popping up. So again, this fire started just a couple of hours ago, and it's very large. It's moved several linear miles, it looks like, already. Like this alone by itself, this little chunk of the fire would be a pretty significant fire in its own right, and that's just one of multiple heads on the fire right now. So that's probably the best camera view that I've got. I'm going to take a look at, I'm actually going to, well, what am I going to do? I'm actually going to pop this window out. Like I've done this before. And I'm going to keep this in the upper right window. And I'm going to bring the comments back up, and then we can see them both in the same window here. Well, actually, I need to move it over here. Sorry, it's always a little bit tricky to do this live. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at the comments. Let me just double check you're seeing what I'm seeing. Yes, okay. Okay, so the radio traffic suggests they're considering shutting down I-5. That's not surprising. One problem with doing that, though, is it's going to potentially impede evacuation traffic, so they have to consider that as well. Hello to all the folks checking in. It's unclear if there are official evacuations on the west side of I-5. I can quickly I can quickly check that here. Yes, there are. It looks like there is now technically. Oh, yes, there's extensive. Yeah, sorry, that was already the case. Again, all of this is to the west of I-5. There's also now a small portion of even Ventura County. So again, I said that I was concerned this is going to hop not only the reservoir, but also the freeway. And then once it does that, it has largely free reign. It's worth noting that a lot of this area has burned in the last decade in other fires. The western part of this in the Thomas Fire, however, we've had really wet winters, as I've talked about. There's been plenty of grass and brush growth to carry a wind-driven fire in this area, and this would be a wind-driven fire tonight, so that is indeed a concern. So I'll bring this back up, bring the live stream back up so we can see it. Yeah, there's a mention that the Weather Service issued a fire warning for this portion of LA County. I'm not really sure why they did for this fire and not for other fires. Maybe there's a new protocol. It really is just an indication that there are mandatory evacuation orders due to fire. It can be issued at the discretion of emergency managers. The use is very inconsistent in California. I actually think this is also the first time I've seen it used. It's not necessarily different from other fire mandatory evacuation orders, but maybe they're using a new mechanism. I'll have to talk to the emergency management folks. It's certainly not consistent, though, which is not ideal. You definitely want consistency in messaging. To be clear, though, this is not a false warning. It is a real warning. It's just, I think, a different way of getting the word out. There's a comment from Mark. The Whitaker Ridge UCSD camera seems to show fire on the west side of the lake. I might check that out in a minute. I-5 now closed, just north of 126. Apparently, there's a comment, I should go to theater mode on YouTube. Apparently, if I do that, YouTube thinks I'm trying to steal the intellectual property of the Disney company, which owns ABC, so they block me and you will not be able to see anything. So because I am giving creative commentary and deliberately making it small and inconvenient to see on the screen, apparently that is allowable. Unfortunately, it's the workaround I currently have. I was not able, by the way, to get anybody from YouTube or Google to reach out to me other than to say, yeah, you're pretty much right, you can't do that, so good luck. So apparently creative reuse is largely dead, at least if you don't have a billion-dollar company. Anyway, this probably is good enough for now. Okay. Again, please don't speculate as to the particular ignition source of this or other fires. It just isn't useful. If you have actual specific information, you can always reach out to CAL FIRE or the county sheriff's department. They always take those sorts of things seriously. But as it turns out, nearly everybody who's claimed that recent fires were arson were wrong. They were not, in fact, arson, despite the fact that people were quote-unquote suspiciously seen leaving the area. You know why else you might want to leave an area quickly is if you see a fire start and you're out on a trail and you want to get the hell out of there. It's probably what I would do. And I certainly wouldn't want to be accused of starting the fire just because I was trying to run away from it. We know for sure that that's what's happened in at least 3 cases in Southern California, and the online mob has come after people who were literally just out taking a hike and tried to run for their lives. They've had to remove their entire social media presence, and they've been getting death threats. So I would ask people not to speculate because you really don't know. Clearly, arson occurs. It exists. It's not like it's not true that sometimes it occurs, but it is not, at this point, does not appear to have been the cause of any of the particularly large fires. Certainly not the Palisades or the Eaton fires in Southern California during this episode. So I will, that is something that is considered not allowed in the comment section, is speculation. So thank you for helping us keep the comment section a constructive place. As many folks are mentioning, there's a lot of newish suburban residential development in and around Castaic, so Now, interesting, we might find out how fire resilient these new developments actually are. That's the unfortunate reality. Maybe it'll be good news. Maybe this fire will just sputter out right when it gets up to people's backyards, which would be a good sign. I still think this one's going to be a problem further downwind because even if it sputters out, then these particular new developments, it has room to run to the north either way. I'm going to pop this window back into the other one. I'm going to check out the other live camera. Okay, so we can continue to see that. Check out Watch Duty for any new information. Okay, so they are expanding the evacuation orders and warnings in Ventura County. Unfortunately, this is sort of what I would be doing this too. I think it's going to move that way. More than a 50% chance it moves that way. Let's see if we can get some cameras closer to the fire. This one, obviously you can see the fire, but I don't know. It's not zoomed in enough to see if it's on the side of the lake or not. Let's see, here's two different camera views from the same camera. If we blow this one up, what do we see on the, this is on the north side of the lake. So you can see it's trying to cover on the north side of the lake. This is sort of what I was talking about. This is the most likely way that you can really see these blow-ups on this side of the fire actually. Let's see on this side. Yeah, we don't really have cameras super close to what I would like to be able to see. This is on the other, this is the heel of the fire. That is also sort of seeing the whole view. I might rely on the comment section to discern that. So here, I'll go back to the footage because again, these are big time flames. These are aggressive upslope runs, upslope and wind driven. And again, I mean, look at the spotting. These spot fires are just lighting everything up like crazy. And then they sort of get sucked back into the main fire, and then pretty much it just becomes one contiguous fire. There's another spot fire, so you can see this thing is just running up the slope here. This is running up a different slope. So pretty much every direction you can see, this fire is running. Looks like there's a water treatment plant there or something like that. Usually those are pretty fire hardened, although, well, I guess, again, we've been finding a lot of things out the hard way recently, so we'll see. Let's take a look. Let's take a listen to the audio here.
For us, if you're looking at a map right now, I can't see off air, but we're to the east side of the evacuation area right now. And if you look at where San Francisco Canyon is, the worry for us is that if it gets into that wash in that canyon, it's just going to run straight to our homes. Unfortunately, it hasn't. We're worried about the embers. I can see that they're...
Okay, so that's sort of an on-the-ground perspective. More images of fire behavior. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a different thing with you now. I want to share... What do I want to share? This. Okay, so what you're going to see, I need to increase the size of this. Sorry, you're seeing me doing some technical editing on the fly. Okay, so you're going to see this ABC footage live while I take a look at some comments right now. So I'm trying something new with what you see versus what I see. A couple of folks commenting that YouTube didn't notify about the session for some reason. Okay, I'm trying to make sure that everybody's seeing what I'm intending for them to see. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that there's what you should be seeing currently is a full screen ABC video. Okay, so that's not what people are seeing. Okay. Oh, that's right. That's because I unpopped the window. Let me repop the window, to use a technical term. Okay. What you're going to see now, hopefully, now I understand why that happened. Okay, now everybody should be seeing full screen. There we go. Everybody should be seeing ABC7 full screen. I'm going to be looking at the chat comments. I think we're where we're supposed to be. That's good. All right. All right. So I'm going to have to ask people to not create flame wars in the chat section. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to remove anybody who does that completely. So please keep the discussion focused on the topic at hand today. Greatly appreciated. Yeah, there is concern with this fire around Santa Clarita, as is mentioned. That more immediate concern. The wind isn't necessarily pushing it directly there, but it's indirectly pushing it there, and so that it's at a threat in the relatively short term. Ventura County is a bigger concern in many ways because it's just right in the line of fire of the most aggressive wind-driven spread, which is always the most dangerous component. There's a question about whether I can do a separate live stream about the Moss Landing fire. That was the fire at the power plant in Monterey County near Highway 1. It's not really my kind of fire. I'm not really. It's a structure fire. There was no vegetation fire component. There's no necessarily weather or climate relationship to that fire. So I'm not sure that I'm the right person to talk about. There are other people who certainly have interesting things to say about it, but I don't have any special insights as a climate scientist who also works with fire scientists and meteorologists. There's a point from Sam. You have to wonder at what point it's worth not trying to put it out due to water scarcity and ineffectiveness of using precious potable water. There is no shortage of potable water in Southern California at this point. Full stop. So I don't really actually think that is a problem. There's this myth that's been going around that Southern California ran out of water to fight these fires. It's just 110% false. In fact, ironically, this reservoir has more water in it than it usually does because, again, we had 2 really wet winters. That's part of what created the fire conditions to be as bad as they are, because we had all this extra abundant growth of vegetation, grass and brush, and now we had record-breaking dry and warm period, which dried it out to record levels. So that sequence did result in record-breaking fire risk, and now we're seeing into late January. But the problem is not that LA doesn't have enough water to fight these fires, it's just that you can't fight large wind-driven wildfires with water. You can protect individual structures, you can try and flank them in a limited way, but there is the physics of large wind-driven wildfires are such that you cannot use water to directly extinguish them. There is no realistic way to get that level of the volume of water that would be required and the spatial distribution of that water that would be required. We would need to invent a new physics, essentially, is the reality. Okay, so I'm going to, right now I'm looking at the comments. I'm going to go back to looking at data and talking about it. So I'm going to check out the ABC live stream again. So I'm seeing what you're seeing now. Again, you can see this, this is intense fire behavior. This particular piece of it is slope driven, so you can see it burning up this canyon. You can see, again, the spotting. You can also see the wind driven component on average is in this direction. So it's kind of moving on average in the direction of the winds, but when it hits a slope, it's changing to move up slope, and then it's going back down with the winds. You see the spot fires developing in front of this. I mean, look at this. This is sort of like a classic fire behavior kind of lesson. Once again, we have, you can see the hot air rising in a convective column that's being tilted over by the prevailing wind. The prevailing wind is from right to left, camera view. This is causing embers to spot over, to fall up and over in the direction of the wind, and is causing the fire to hopscotch in front of itself. Again, there is this contiguous spread here, and everywhere else there are these embers falling. All right, so now you're going to continue to see ABC7, and at least you should, and I'm going to start looking at some additional things. All right, that's a good point about the copyright issues. Maybe I shouldn't pop this all the way out right now. Okay, so I've moved this back in. That's actually a good point. Okay, I'm back to you're gonna see. You're going to see what? You're going to see. Okay, yep, this is what I need. So you're just seeing my full screen, or no, you're not seeing my full screen. You're seeing my face. No, you're not. Sorry, today I was not planning on doing the session. I'm a little bit discombobulated. I was trying to get some other things done. Let me just see. Okay. You're seeing my screen again. Good. Taking a check. Watch duty again. Not a lot of recent updates. Let's see if we can get a camera view again. Pop this up. Yeah, so really this tells the story, right? You can see the wind-driven spread in this direction. The plume is lying down. It's sort of getting caught. So there's actually wind shear. So the winds up at this level are even stronger than down here. You can see something new blowing up in the middle of the plume. This is not really what you want to see. This is a classic Santa Ana wind-driven smoke plume presentation under record dry vegetation conditions. Taking a look at satellite, it's not looking any better. In fact, it continues to look a little bit worse. Let's take a look at radar. Same, it's actually looking worse, not better. Going back to the news, they're just looking at some of the properties in the way. Again, this fire doesn't look as bad from this angle, but they're not looking at the part of the fire that's actually of most concern to me, which is this angle, which you can see better from the air. See another long. So what they're doing here with the retardant drops is they're trying to flank the fire. So you can see that they're laying retardant down along this ridge. Why are they doing it here? Why are they not going in front of the main fire? Because this fire is just going to hop over any retardant you put down if you try and get in front of it in the direction of the wind. So they're going to do a second drop. They're going to lay down a longer line here. So they're trying to make this essentially a contiguous barrier along the ridgeline to reinforce this. I don't know if that's an existing fire road or a dozer line or something, but and they're going to be able to flank. They're going to try and box the fire in on its flank. Is it going to work? I don't know. This is some pretty well, this is impressive. You don't see the drops coming from two different directions within a few seconds of each other all that often. So this is now probably going to drop somewhere along this flank. Well, maybe, or it's going to loop around and do that. Okay, maybe that's from an air traffic control perspective. It's unusual. I think that might have been a trick of perspective. For safety reasons, usually they're going to have aircraft coming low in only one direction, obviously, because if you have them coming from two directions, bad things can happen. So I'm guessing this one is probably going to do this and then loop around. That's probably what we're going to see. Again, we see this tilted plume. It's even a tilted rotating plume a little bit. So that's, again, an indication of pretty aggressive fire behavior. And again, it's not a forest fire. This is burning in grass and brush. But you don't need a forest to have this kind of fire behavior when it's just this darn dry, following 2 wet years with very abundant growth of that vegetation. Here's the ABC7 perspective. Again, we just see this fire advancing. That's a spot fire that took off. Okay, I'm going to go back to watch duty, see if there's new info. There was an update 2 minutes ago. Northbound and southbound are closed in different locations now, so that is now confirmed. Just checking on other fires, don't see them. I'm going to check out the chat again. You're going to see me talking in a minute, so actually you're going to... Okay, now you will see me. I got it right this time. Okay, I'm going to take a look here. Okay, I'm just doing a little bit of moderation. I think this is the chat where unfortunately I really historically people have been pretty constructive with their comments today. That's not universally the case, so I'm working on it, folks. The question, what are those buildings, the round ones? I think those are probably, they look like it's a water treatment facility, and those are some of the settling tanks, possibly. I don't know for sure. Something like that seems likely. Do you think it's possible we get rain in SoCal this weekend? Yes, in fact, I think it's even likely at this point. I'll talk a little bit about that later this session. There are also some other round structures that are water storage tanks. I think the question was about the really big ones. I think those might be water treatment plants, but there are also fire flow enhancing water storage tanks. If you've ever wondered why there are those random storage tanks up in open spaces and parks in California, it is precisely to avoid the problem that we had during the Eaton and Palisades fires, which is the water pressure running dry. You store a bunch of water under normal circumstances at a relatively high elevation so that there's extra volume and pressure that you can exert if there's a fire and you suddenly need to use a lot of water quickly. The problem was, during those fires, they were so big and lasted so long that it completely exhausted even the contingencies that were in place. These helicopters are showing the southern flank of the fire. So I'm actually more concerned about the northern flank in the long run, given its potential to jump I-5 and go into Ventura County. And I don't think there's as much air attack on that side. There's just not much they can do. So this is one of those cases where I think it's actually a bit worse than it looks, because we're actually seeing the gentler, easier to manage in relative terms side of the fire. Although there is, of course, still real risk on that side of it this time as well. Yeah, it's eating through the drops. And this was, as I mentioned a few days ago, the Fuels and Fire Behavior Advisory from the Southern California Geographic Area Coordination Center pointed out that when under the wind-driven conditions, many of these fires have been resistant or impossible to control and have just chewed through retardant lines. Fire retardant isn't fireproof. I mean, the retardant itself is, but you can't cover 100% of the vegetation completely with it. For a slow-moving, not very intense fire, it can be enough the fire will go up to the line and kind of just sputter out. If it's a very hot fire, it will either slowly chew through the line and then pick right back up on the other side of it, or it could just jump right across with spotting. And I think that's probably what we're seeing today. There's a very large sanitation disposal facility not far downwind from the fire. How could it be impacted if the fire reaches it? I am not an expert in refuse facilities, but I know that sometimes they can catch on fire, and it's pretty bad when they do, because imagine a half-mile, wide pile of trash, perhaps 1,000 feet deep, from many years of garbage accumulation catching on fire. There's no easy way to put it out, and it puts out some pretty gnarly fumes. So hopefully there's fire mitigation there. Usually these things are planned for, but we'll see. Okay, I have to take a look and see if there's yet another fire up in San Luis Obispo. I'll take a look in a minute. Okay, let me look at the update. Okay, so the most recent update from Watch Duty is that Air Attack, which is the coordination firefighting aircraft, not a retardant dropping aircraft, but essentially the airborne air traffic and fire management coordination control aircraft, has requested all available National Guard MAFs, so the modifiable, essentially military aircraft that have been outfitted with retardant tanks. It requested all 8 of them. That is a very large order, and I think an indication of significant concern that this fire could become a much bigger problem than it currently is. Let's see what's up. Okay, so there is, it looks like, a new fire up in San Luis Obispo 22 minutes ago. No other updates. Let's see if it looks like in the 20-minute camera view. I know you can't see this, I'm just looking for myself. Can't really see it on any cameras right now. I realize that no one can see this. I'm just trying to... Okay, it doesn't look all that threatening. Also, vegetation conditions are not as extreme up there, nor are the winds, so keep an eye on it, but I'm not overly concerned with it at the moment. All eyes remain on the Hughes Fire, where again, all 8 National Guard MAFs, air tankers, were just requested by Air Attack. A sign of the times. So I'm going to ask one last time that people not argue with each other in the chat, and if that doesn't stop, unfortunately, even though the discussion is interesting, I'm going to have to just remove those comments and prevent those folks from posting. So please do not use the chat to argue with each other. It just isn't the place for it. So I'm going to share my screen again, take a moment in between. Oh, that's the wrong page. I don't actually want to share that one right now. Let me just double check what people are seeing at the moment. Should be... Sorry, I did not have my computer configured the way I normally do for this right now. Okay, so you should be seeing first Watch Duty is what I was showing, and now the satellite map, again, showing the Hughes Fire, the big black hole. It's expanding and getting more intense. So unlike in recent days where we'd see a black spot pop up and then sputter out, this one is not, which means it's not becoming less intense. The smoke is a little hard to see. All right, so here again, back to weather models talking about the weekend rain. This is the good news is, again, if you look at the weekend, each of these, again, is one model ensemble member, so view these as each as equally likely iterations of how the weather could go the next few weeks. This is from the European model, the ECMWF. Again, bone dry until Saturday, so nothing obviously on the horizon. In fact, it's going to be potentially record warm, dry, and windy in this period. So this is one reason why the current fire is a major concern, because we have several days still of unusually warm, dry, and windy weather. Not ideal. However, we probably do have rain on the way this weekend. Right now, as you can see, there's a couple of ways that the low pressure system could still miss LA to the east. So for example, no rain in this ensemble member, no rain on this ensemble member, almost no rain here, none, almost none. But that's about 5 out of 50. So at this point, I would estimate there's a 1 in 10 chance that the system completely misses Southern California and only brings another wind event. Not totally negligible, but there's a 90% chance that it doesn't miss. And so the amount of rain that may fall in LA, the most likely amount is probably just about 1/4 of an inch to 1/3 of an inch. So nothing dramatic on average. But some of these models are showing perhaps more like 1/2 an inch of rain, so, or even a little bit more. So I would say somewhere between about 2/10 and 1/2 an inch of rain in LA this weekend. Certainly nothing to sneeze at. It's not going to bring LA out of a record-breaking dry start to the season, actually, because there's not a whole lot of potential for rain to continue thereafter. It's going to be kind of a one-off event this weekend. But it does look about 80 or 90% likely at this point that some rain will fall. It will be heavier in the mountains. In fact, some of the mountains will probably see 1/2 an inch to an inch. That's a pretty good soaking. That will greatly help with the current level of fire activity, but it will not be enough to end fire season unless there is follow-up rain. So right now, there's a low chance only of follow-up rain. This will be enough to help extinguish, once it comes Saturday and Sunday, this will be enough to help control and extinguish existing fires and reduce the risk probably for the 7 to 10 days following. So I think this period will very likely be a period of greatly reduced fire risk. Once we get back to the end of the first week in February, though, unless it rains again, we're going to be at the mercy of the winds, because all it will take is one Santa Ana event to evaporate all of this water, and we'll be right back to where we started. So I do think that it's going to rain this weekend. That's the good news. The bad news, potentially, is that it will be in the form of a very unstable atmosphere. So there will probably be some thunderstorms around. They'll be capable of producing very heavy downpours locally. Most places will see little or none, but isolated areas, particularly in the mountains, could see very intense downpours of 1/2 an inch or an inch of rain in an hour. If that happens over a recent wildfire burn area, particularly on the Eaton or Palisades fires, or even the line or bridge fires from earlier in the year in September, there is going to be a risk of significant and potentially deadly debris flows. That is something that people should probably start to prepare for now if you're in a vulnerable area below a wildfire burn zone. There's very little risk from this event if you're not in or near a wildfire burn area. So this will be a net beneficial rain for 95% of people, but it could be quite dangerous for the 5% of people who live in or near those fire zones susceptible to debris flows. And so I do expect the National Weather Service will likely issue a flash flood watch for the burn areas this weekend for flash flood and debris flow risk. If you are evacuated, there may be new evacuation orders or warnings for debris flow risk this weekend, believe it or not. So even if the vast majority of places in Southern California do not see heavy precipitation this weekend, as I expect they will not, some isolated areas probably will. And if we get unlucky and it hits some of the very recent high-intensity steep fire burn slopes, that could produce major debris flows. So they will be very isolated, but that does not mean that it will be mild. They'll be isolated, but they could be quite serious if they occur. Just to show what this looks like in terms of the progression of the weather. Again, here's the European model depiction of the system. You see it drops down over Lake Tahoe, brings a burst of snow, finally. Not a lot, a few inches of cold powder, but hey, it's better than nothing. Maybe some isolated showers in parts of the San Joaquin Valley, Monterey Bay area, and also along the central coast. But the real showers will probably be southern Sierra and southern California as we go, especially mainly actually some on maybe not on Saturday. Actually, Saturday looks like it'll be mostly dry. Some snow up by Tahoe, but it's going to be Sunday that these showers and scattered thunderstorms would be most likely across southern California. Before this system lingers a bit, maybe into Monday, could be some additional scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms before this thing moves east and is out of there. So, and again, showing some potential return of rain in February for Northern California, but there's really nothing else on the horizon for Southern California after this. If I look at the ensemble average precipitation for the western U.S. for this weekend, here's what it looks like. We go through Monday, let's go through Tuesday. That's a respectable amount of rain. So the mountains perhaps getting about a half inch, maybe a little bit more locally. The lower elevations like LA, San Diego, probably getting more like a quarter to a third of an inch. There is a chance of showers essentially really anywhere south of the I-80 corridor. This is a part of California that really needs it. Again, this ain't a lot of water because this is mid-January and this is a bit of this is a pretty weak system, but it could bring isolated thunderstorm downpours that could cause debris flows this weekend. That is a concern, but everyone else, this will be beneficial primarily because it will help temporarily with fire risk, although it will not end fire season in all likelihood. There will also be some concerns with runoff of toxic ash, even in places that don't have debris flow risk but did experience recent fires. Okay, I'm going to go back to the chat here, or actually, you're going to see my face for a minute while I read the chat again. Okay. I appreciate the folks who sort of self-corrected in the comment section. That's always preferable than me blocking anybody. I hate to do that. Okay. Although I will do it if necessary, so keep that in mind. What kind of capes are we looking at? So it's a question about convective available potential energy. This is essentially a measure of instability in the atmosphere and perhaps an indicator of the risk of thunderstorms. Let me actually log into another. I'm going to do this off camera because I actually I need to. Well, you're seeing me log in on camera, but I'm not showing you my password. At least I don't think I am. Let's see. So I will start screen sharing once I actually am able to. Okay, I think we're there. I'm going to share the screen, guys. It's a good question. I actually don't know the answer, so I'm going to take a look because it is a good question. Let's zoom into, this is Pivotal Weather, is another website that I use and have a subscription to. Unfortunately, a lot of this weather data is not always freely available, so I have an absurd number of weather-related subscriptions that I can share with you all on screen, but of course can't actually grant you access to. So let's see, this is the European model. This is what it will look like. This is Friday. That's too early, so we want to go to, this is Saturday. Okay, this is Sunday. Sometimes the surface-based instability doesn't always show up as being all that substantial. That's this is a little bit early in the day, so let me take a look a little bit later. Because in California, it doesn't take much, so there's not seeing all that impressive cape right now, at least from the surface-based perspective. Well, let's check and see if there's any other real telltale indicator. We could do the most unstable cape layer. That might be more indicative. There's a little bit more. And sometimes it takes a little while for these models to fully resolve the level of instability that can occur. Let's see, how far out are we? 96 hours. Let me look and see if the this is what I'm looking for. That's too early. It might be a little bit too, it might, essentially the answer might be is a little bit too early to know for sure, but let me just see what pops up. This is, yeah, too early. The Cape resolving models don't really have, I think there will be some net buoyant air. So I'll revisit that again. I may have a blog post on Friday if I can possibly find time for a new one. So we'll see if I can find time for a new one. But my inbox continues to be, there really hasn't been a single day where it hasn't been a complete disaster since the early part of the month. So you'll see my face again briefly. I'm going to take a look at comments again, and then I'm going to go back to the live coverage of the fire, which is the main occasion for this, since there are, once again, some pretty dramatic images coming through here. No updates on watch duty right now from the fire. Right, so the winds, unfortunately, are picking up tonight, so this is not a good time to have a fire in this place. A re-strengthening, in fact, high wind warnings go back into effect tonight. So the winds will strengthen overnight in the fire zone, which is not what we want to see. They're going to continue to be from roughly the same direction, so we'll be pushing it even more strongly in the direction that in which it's already going. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again so you can see the live camera footage, double checking on the status of any other fires. Here's that fire up in San Luis Obispo. 5 acres burning slowly in annual grasses. I don't think this one's going to be a big problem. They'll probably be able to catch that one. By far, this is the much bigger concern. This is a pretty big evacuation area. In fact, all the way up to, is that up to the pass on the Grapevine? Technically, there's an evacuation warning all the way up past Gorman on I-5, so that is pretty high up. Okay, some of the areas in Santa Clarita that were under warnings earlier are now under evacuation orders, which is mandatory. Again, this fire footprint is old. This fire is significantly larger than this map suggests. Okay, taking a look at this aerial footage, again, it remains very active on the flanks, continues to be wind-driven. I'm trying to get a sense of where... Okay. So I think this camera view from KCal might actually be looking north to south. No, east to west in this direction. Something like that. So if that's correct, this is the flank of the fire that I think has the greatest potential to spot across the lake. Well, of course, they cut away. Honestly, it's a little bit hard to tell. I don't know if that's a correct perspective or not. They're clearly still trying to use the lake as a major control feature. I just don't know how successful that will necessarily be under these conditions. We'll have to see. Here's the satellite again. Continuing to show mostly progression actually on the southeastern flank, so trying to get some more information on that northern flank of the fire. So they're showing fire creeping around the edge of the lake. I mean, it is getting around the edge. Okay, so look at that. So there's fire. Trying to get a sense of perspective. Let's listen in for a minute.
Definitely worrisome in terms of what we're seeing and how quickly we've seen it move. Again, I mean, pointing in that direction, you can see a little bit of the light, you can see a little bit of that blue sky, but it's been pretty dark. If my photographer just pans over here, you can see over here just how orange it is. Orange. I mean, dark, hard to see. And it's hard to see from here because the smoke is...
Okay, I really am hoping to get some from the air perspectives, because that's really the only way we're going to be able to tell where exactly this thing is. Clearly still burning intensely from the live camera footage. Yeah, and clearly spreading around the lake to a certain extent, just based on this on the ground camera imagery. Okay, so there's another aerial view. I think this is still from the southwest flank, which right now looks like it might be the most active one. Okay, I'm going to go back to watch duty and see if we can get a view from any of the cameras. So here is, okay, so this is looking, so the right half of the image here, so this part of it should be the right flank of the fire, the flank of the fire that I am most concerned about jumping over the lake. What does this look like on that flank of the fire? So I think what we're seeing is this part of the fire. So it's kind of far away. You can't, honestly, you can't tell. Interesting. You notice I mentioned wind shear. This is a pretty dramatic illustration of that wind shear. See the high-level cirrus clouds moving like this and the low-level winds moving 180 degrees almost in the opposite direction? That's pretty remarkable. So it's very clear that the firefight is being enhanced by the ability of aircraft. As bad as it is, it probably would have been across the lake by now if it weren't for aircraft. I still think there's a pretty good chance it will, but at this point, I don't necessarily think it is across, or at least there have only been isolated spots they've caught. Let's take a look at what the vegetation is like here. I'm going to turn off the what else do I need to turn off? I don't know what I need to turn off to get that well, anyway, this is good enough. So this is the part of the lake I think where it has the highest chance to spot across, sort of in this area where there's pretty thick contiguous vegetation on both sides, and this is only about 1,000 feet. This fire is definitely capable of jumping 1,000 feet, so we'll see if it does. There's the dam there. Supposedly it may have already spotted to the south of the dam at one point. But the lake gets narrower and narrower, so the farther this gets back up here, the easier this is going to be to hop across. There's still I-5, but that's a narrower barrier than the lake, so if it makes it across the lake in these conditions, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't also hop across I-5. So that's sort of what we're seeing right now. Maybe this gives us, okay, so this is maybe a better view now on that north side of the lake. What are we seeing? We are still seeing active fire spread, and then in the most last couple of frames, we actually see a bit of a blow up actually right in this area where I'm worried about it hopping the lake. And you can see if it gets to this side, I mean, this is the kind of vegetation we're talking about. Thick, lush, doesn't look like it's burned recently. So, very much remains a concern. I don't think we're out of the woods at all with that. I-5 is now fully closed. Okay, going back to live coverage. That's one aerial view. Those are just photographs from people. Again, the acreage they're showing on screen is smaller than it currently is for sure. Okay, so I'm trying to get a sense of where this is. All right, so here's maybe, I'm trying to get a sense of what this road is, because this is gonna make, looks like it might be making a pretty hard run towards this. I don't know. Is that I-5? It might be I-5. Let me look at a map of watch duty and see what's down here by the foot of the fire down here. Are there any other major roads? No, I think okay, so I think this is what we're seeing. I think this is down by Sulphur Springs here. I think that live camera view based on the angle. So I think this is already getting close to I-5 here on the south side. So this fire has now made it past the south side of the lake. And the problem with this is, as you can see, there's neighborhoods nestled in all along here, but there is also plenty of vegetation for contiguous east to west spread. So I'm going to go back to that camera view because I think this is actually going to be the key. This may be the first place where it has the potential to spot. Doesn't look like it's done it yet, but yeah, I think that is I-5. Let's listen in.
Ridge Route Road, I should say. This entire area is in the line of fire as this fire continues to creep towards the 5 freeway. This is the most populated area that we are looking at in the immediate future as this fire continues to run up these hillsides here, where there is also a water treatment plant on the south side of Lake Hughes Road. Right now, it's running into some grass around the water treatment facility. There are structure protection units right around Earl Ridge filtration plant right there in the center of your screen. You can see the flames lining the perimeter of that property as well. We are also being informed that Pitchness Detention Center is also in the process of being evacuated. Upwards of 475 inmates there as buses line up along that major road there, which is going to be Maximum Road and Storage Road. Right there, you can see all those buses lining up in front of those barracks. In the meantime, 5 freeway continuing to be threatened by this fire as they have shut down both sides of the Golden State Freeway here in Castaic, obviously causing major concern both for people who travel through here, but more immediately for the evacuees who are trying to get away from this fire. Right now, the town of Castaic is under the gun and completely obscured by smoke by this Hughes Fire, guys.
All right, Chris, we're taking a live look right now from Air 7. Again, we're going to go back talking about Pitchness Detention Center. Let's go to Bruce Thomas. He is a law enforcement expert. Bruce, we understand.
All right, so I'm gonna wait for them to zoom in a little bit, but you get the idea. So this is directly threatening to jump I-5 on the south side of the fire right now, which appears to be the more active side. It could also do so to the north, but right now it's within a few thousand feet of doing so in this vicinity where there's unfortunately a bunch of structures. So we'll see what happens. I'm gonna check out if there's any update here. Does not look like it. Check out the camera views again, because this was okay. So this looks like it's getting pretty active on the northern flank where it might try and jump the lake. Let's take a look at the camera views down here. That's almost too zoomed in. That's almost too zoomed out. Okay, but actually I'm seeing something interesting here. Yeah, oh wow. Okay, so this is really fascinating and a little bit concerning. So take a look at what's happening. So the fire's plume is getting rising a little bit before getting blown over by the wind. But look at this. That's a mountain wave. So watch what happens when I play this again. Watch how the flow is moving sort of through this slowly evolving feature. At the end here, there's even a little bit of a hydraulic jump. Do you see? Now I want people to focus their attention in this section as I play it again. Do you see how this is consistently going down and then up? This is a classic sort of tracer visualization of exactly the process. Now this is not a particularly extreme or dramatic mountain wave, but it's visually dramatic because we can see it because there's a tracer in the smoke. So we actually see the different wavelengths, and you can see they're sort of irregular wavelengths. But you can see, again, I'm going to play this again because this is actually a pretty remarkable little sequence. This is an indication, this is sort of how turbulent and then laminar the wind flow is. Yeah, you can really see that. Wow, that is quite something, especially on the left half of the screen. So this is an indication that there could be some weak mountain wave activity tonight. Not like anything we saw during the Eaton fire, but again, you don't necessarily need that if the winds are strong enough. And you can kind of see how these Santa Ana winds really interact with the topography and create mountains of wind above the ground level as well. So that is some pretty remarkable footage there. Okay, I'm going to go back to the live camera view. That's not this one. Just to see what we're seeing. I'm going to go back to the live audio, and then I'm going to go back to answering some questions.
Mandatory evacuations, Kevin?
Never mind, that's not, I don't really want to hear the on-the-ground perspective. Okay, so I'm going to go back, you're going to see my face, and I'm going to, once again, look at questions. Yeah, if the news said that the winds will be dying down overnight, they are incorrect. They will strengthen overnight. In fact, there is a high wind warning that goes into effect for the fire zone beginning at 10 p.m. tonight. So there's a wind advisory now, and that gets upgraded to a high wind warning. The Weather Service discussion actually noted that this was a borderline PDS situation, particularly dangerous situation, red flag situation, but they did not issue one because it was kind of marginal from the perspective of PDS category, but obviously it's a higher end red flag condition once again tonight into tomorrow. How worried should the Thomas Fire areas be about this fire? It's still pretty far away, but unfortunately, if this does jump the 5, it could be there in that vicinity tonight, and there is enough regrowth to be concerned. So I would wait and see if this becomes established west of I-5. If it becomes established west of I-5, then I would consider putting your plans into place pretty far west into Ventura County tonight before you go to bed. Yes, I-5 is fully closed. Do I think the winds will pick up too much for air support? Maybe overnight, although the fixed wing air support generally goes away after sunset anyway, and it may become too strong even for the night dropping helicopters. They may push the envelope a little bit on that. We will see. I don't know. It's not slam dunk obviously too strong, but you could get there. That is within range of the forecast tonight. The Pozo fire in San Luis Obispo, unsurprisingly for a small fire burning in seasonal grasses, is already contained. So the main concern remains this large fire, Hughes Fire, surrounding almost Lake Castaic right now. Yeah, pretty incredible. There's a visible hydraulic jump in that smoke plume. Fun fact, I am not from Southern California, but when I'm talking about freeways in Southern California to audiences, primarily in Southern California, I will add the article in front of freeway names like the 5 and the 101, even though I generally do not do that. So it's one way to speak the language, if you will. In fact, 101 is in Northern California, where I grew up. It's just 101. It's not the 101. So the same road loses the article depending on latitude. Okay, so there's folks saying that KTLA has a good view right now, so I might pop over to them. So we'll see what we see here. So sometimes they put the road networks superimposed on the images on screen, which is helpful, although it's sometimes a little bit misleading because the angle, I think called parallax, the difference between where the grid lines appear to be versus where they actually are. It's a bigger issue if you're looking from space from a satellite where you can be miles off. Here it's not that bad, but the same general principle applies. So there can be some misalignment, but it's still helpful to get a general sense of where things are. This is a very large fire, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, it looks like, so you can see the long retardant line they have down along this flank, and the fire has quieted down where they've gotten retardant down, and it's still very active. They don't have retardant, I think, up here, closer to the head of the, I guess this is the left flank. So again, the fire flanks are named like the banks of rivers, like left bank, right bank, relative to the direction of flow, or the direction of movement in this case. So because it's moving from right to left, So again, what we're seeing is lots of spotting. As usual, they pivoted to the drama on the ground. Well, actually, but they're near a spot fire. Let's see what they're saying.
As we talk, let's just go ahead and just get out of the clearance to a better safe spot, because it seems like the flames over there are burning around the utility poles down the way. So the last thing we want to do is kind of, you know, stay in the path of anything if they were to come down. Let's walk closer to the bridge here so that our viewers can get a better look. Guys, it's been, what, 3-4 minutes since I've been on the air? You've got this burning, and then look at how this area has really kicked up, right? So just to show you how much fuel is here.
Sorry, folks, if it's still just my face looking.
This way, right over there, just the intensity of the
Let me swap it over.
as the flames swirl round and round and round, and basically changing the color of sunlight right now to this sort of orange hue. And as we talk about that, Assad, if you wouldn't mind showing some of the dozers that are heading towards the flames. You can hear them hopefully over my mic. And that one dozer right there is going directly into the flames to start working on some of the
There you go. That's a pretty dramatic image.
You know, using some of the sand.
You can see that's how these dozer operators go direct.
Some of those flames, because obviously what you need for a fire to continue to burn is oxygen, and hopefully by pushing some of the dirt to cover some of the flames, they can make a stop here so that these flames do not jump over the road.
So just to clarify, usually the dozer operators are not going to be, I guess occasionally you can, if there's a small spot fire, they might try and do this, but they're generally not going to be pushing dirt onto active flames. The goal is to cut off the fuel supply by creating an unburnable mineral soil gap between where the fire is at the moment and where it's headed. So to create a fire line of essentially clear it of vegetation and scrape it down to mineral soils that is not burnable, and thereby deprive the fire of that fuel once it reaches the fire break. It's not so much like throwing dirt on a campfire or something with a shovel. Although I suppose that probably does happen occasionally.
We're kind of staying in the spot that we are to make sure that, you know, if things go poorly, we are not in the line of danger. Part of the training that we've had through the years.
Okay, ABC 7, they're talking about the red flag warning. Again, the high wind warning that goes into effect later, as is reflected here. The high wind warning goes into effect tonight, so it doesn't even begin yet. Winds will strengthen. Wind gusts is up to 55 to 65 miles an hour once again. Locally, again, that's not, I know what folks want to hear, but that is just the way it is right now. Still have a very wind tilted plume here that's quite apparent on imagery. Okay, I'm hoping they're going to zoom in. I want to see how close this is to I-5. The 5, sorry. A little hard to tell still. Okay, okay, so this is a slightly more zoomed in view. So this is making a pretty aggressive run. It looks like this is mainly in grass, but I mean, that's a pretty dramatic looking fire front right now, even though it's primarily a grass fire. As we've seen, grass fires, you know, they can still burn pretty intensely. They can certainly burn quickly. And it looks like there's a lot of vehicles here. I don't know, are those buses or RVs? They're awfully close. Hopefully it doesn't get into, I don't know if that's a mobile home park or something else, but those are unfortunately very flammable, so that could be a pretty big problem pretty quickly. Of course, they cut away from it in that moment. We'll come back to it. Here's watch duty. Here's the most recent image. Let's see if we can still see that wave effect going. Yeah, you can still see it, especially that little hydraulic jump right there. That's pretty remarkable. Again, it's not necessarily rare, but they're normally invisible because you don't have stuff in the air to see it, as we do with the smoke from this fire right now. Let's take a look. So this is on the other side of the fire from where the helicopters currently are. Kind of hard to tell. You can see the I-5 is shut down. Okay, so you are gonna go back to seeing my face again. I'm gonna check. Sorry, I would just leave it up on the news footage, but with the way that the creative reuse issues are going with YouTube, I keep running into these problems. Okay, let's see. Let's see comments. I'm glad. Yeah, sorry. It's been today has been another long day already. Sorry about the screen share issue earlier. I think it's fixed now. VERS showing many hotspots west of Castaic Lake along I-5. Worth noting that VERS, it will also detect heat in the smoke plume, which is heavily tilted. That does not necessarily mean there's actually active fire west of the lake, even though, unfortunately, I do think it will probably get there on its own. Those hotspots from VERS can be misleading. VERS is a very high-resolution radiometer, I believe, from a satellite. It is helpful in fires, but it can overestimate the extent of the fire in the direction the hot plume is tilting, which in this case is that direction. So we'll see. There's a question about how the tires and the dozers don't ignite. The trick is that there are no tires on the dozer. It's a metal track. So there are, of course, flammable parts on a bulldozer, but the tracks themselves are not. They're made of metal. Well, I agree that my commentary should qualify as creative reuse, but the AI that YouTube uses disagrees with that assertion, and unfortunately, YouTube's response was, "We can't argue with the AI." Curious what their lawyers would say about that if the shoe were on the other foot, but anyway. I am not a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Okay, I'm gonna go back once again, take a look. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the live camera footage again. Someday I'll find a better way to toggle back and forth, but I'm constantly in emergency crisis mode these days, so I really haven't had any time to figure out some of the finer points of live streaming. So again, it's a shoestring budget. I don't have any support staff. It's just me, so I do my best. Here's the satellite imagery. It's not quite VERS level, but it gives you an idea. Still burning hot. A little bit less so on its northern flank, but it also shows progression to the south, which is what we're seeing near I-5. Look at that long line of fire. Not super intense on this segment that's burning through grass, so it's a very long active fire line. I mean, look at this. It's a few miles long. But it's not all of it super intense. You can see, again, the intensity goes down when it goes through low grass, which is, that's what you'd expect. Let's see the kcal imagery. They do have the road grid on, which is helpful. Again, this is where it's trying to approach I-5. I don't know what's burning there, but it looks like it's more than grass, so I don't know. It is hard to get a sense of perspective right now. I don't really know how far west this fire is. If it's still east of the lake or I-5, that's good. But I don't know if that's actually the case or how likely it is to remain the case. They are hitting it very, very hard from all available sides, that's for sure. I'm just sort of waiting for the right camera angle from these news helicopters to show up. So they're hitting this flank coming around the south side very hard, obviously. It's kind of a stalemate. I don't think it's clear exactly who's winning right now. On that side of things, anyway. Go back to the camera views. I can't remember if this was the one that had the cool... Maybe it was this one. Yeah, this is the one that has the hydraulic jump. So not much change, still a wind-driven tilted plume. Burning with visibly at least similar intensity as before, which is not necessarily a good thing. So obviously they're showing more spotting. Let's see, ABC has a better angle, but KCAL has better geographic orientation here. Sorry for cutting back and forth here, but I think the KCAL angle is better. Obviously they're putting out spot fires with the water drops from the helicopters, as you can see on the right there. And so, I mean, it is possible that they stop this along I-5, which will be fairly remarkable if they do, given the conditions. It'll be a really major good stop, but I don't think that's guaranteed. In fact, I think there's a decent chance either to the north or here down to the south, or perhaps both, that it does end up making it across. Let's listen.
And with the way this is all set up, the fire definitely has a big advantage, but at least the winds are light enough that we're able to have those air tankers and have those helicopters, and hopefully most of the helicopters can stay after the sun goes down, but we're going to need to get as many retardant drops as possible in. I wish that they could get in here on the west side of the fire, but unfortunately I think that the smoke might just be too thick, and with you have the mountains as well right there. I'm not sure that the air tankers will be able to get into this area right here that I'm showing you on the screen, the 5 around Lake Hughes Road, to try to prevent the fire from jumping the freeway. So we'll just have to see how all that plays out. There's concern right here. Is this, as the flames are getting very, very near a water treatment facility. We've had a lot of ground crews that are here ready to meet the flames and make sure that it doesn't encroach on this very important facility. But this is going to be affected. Obviously, Castaic Lake as well. You know, we could be talking about no drinking orders like we've had in the past.
Yeah, it's kind of speculation. I'm guessing it looks like the fire immediately around the treatment plant is much lower in intensity. I'm guessing they have some pretty aggressive vegetation management there, which might save the day, for at least for that water treatment plant, hopefully. No guarantees. Again, the ember storm can do things you don't want it to do, but it certainly helps if you don't have a wall of flames roaring down on your property, and instead you sort of have a grass fire that you could walk over with heavy enough jeans on, as it has been related to me by many folks who work in fire, is that it's always a good sign if you can step over it with appropriate cotton pants on, which it kind of looks like in that segment where it's low grass by the treatment plant. That's kind of the conditions they have there. Obviously not the case in these images now. Those are much taller, more intense flames. No one's stepping over that. Well, there's a little... You keep seeing these, literally thousands of transient brief fire whirls like this. You keep seeing it. It keeps wanting to spin up right in this vicinity. I'll get my drawing tool. It kind of seems to keep wanting to spin up here, somewhere along here. Those aren't fire tornadoes, those are fire whirls, and they're common on the flanks of fires of even modest intensity, but there are, you keep seeing, there's another one there. It's an indication of an active fire. It's not necessarily an indication of anything, extremely unprecedented or anything, but it's certainly an indication that it's an active fire flank. So this is not necessarily looking any better. This still looks like a pretty intense plume. Let's see what it looks like down here. I can't tell if those are spot fires yet or what. They may be able to catch it down here along I-5. That would be nice. They're clearly working the heel of the fire hard. They're trying to prevent it from getting back up into the wilderness. And they're not going to put firefighters on the ground up here. They're just going to try and hem it in with retardant drops. They have a couple more hours, I guess. At least 2 more hours probably. Well, hour and a half before it gets too dark for these airdrops to continue. So they're trying to get them in as much as possible then. That's certainly the case. So you can see the goal here is not to get retardant on the fire. The goal is to get retardant on ridgelines to prevent the future progression. So here on this live shot, again, we're seeing maybe a slight weakening in the ambient winds. This is getting a slightly taller plume right now. It's not necessarily good because you can see that the winds are still strong here and they're still very active plume. So the problem is in this plume, each time this fire flares up, it can send embers up into the plume, which can come up and then rain down as much, as half a mile to a mile or even 2 miles ahead of itself. So that's the concern, is that even if they catch the fire, on this side of I-5, any segment of the fire here could send embers up and over, and then it's off to the races again. And so they have to stop every single ember that ignites something dry on the other side. And I'm guessing there's probably quite a few of them, or there will be shortly. So this is starting to get closer. So interesting on this view on the left here. Okay, they got rid of that. There was a bit of a fire world trying to develop there. Take a look at satellite again. Still looks fairly toasty. Let me take a look at the satellite hotspots just so we can see what people are talking about in terms of VERS. So yeah, so this is what people were talking about in terms of the VERS on the west side of the lake. There may be fire here. I don't know. It's possible. It's certainly possible. In fact, I do expect it to eventually hop. But it's also possible that because the plume of the fire is sort of oriented like this, VERS might be catching the hot plume and detecting this part as fire. This part clearly is fire because they've officially mapped it out. The fire, I think, actually now extends in a footprint more like this, based on what we're seeing. The question is, does it also extend to this region? If it does, the last line of defense is really I-5, but that's a weaker line of defense than the lake was. So we will see. All right, you're going to see my face again. I'm going to go answering some questions. All right, let's see here. I work with the media folks at University of California and UCLA, and they're incredibly great folks, very helpful. I work with them closely. There is not really personnel or funding support for things like this to greatly expand it at the level. I mean, really, ideally there'd be something like a home studio setup. I did, helpfully I was able to crowd fund actually the equipment I'm currently using, which is much better than what I had a year or so ago when I first started doing these live streams. So I'm very glad that the audience has been able to contribute to that over time, and you're reaping the benefits because these live streams were very, very clunky in the beginning and had lots of technical issues. Notably, it hasn't been so bad this time around. In fact, I just realized I am not plugged in to my hardwired internet. Hasn't been too much of a problem yet, but let me, since it's literally on the floor here, again, this was sort of at the last minute, wasn't planning on doing it. There shouldn't be any interruption. It'll be seamless transferring over from one internet source to the other because they're redundant. But just realizing that I probably should have done that at the beginning of the session, so thanks for the reminder. Okay. I'm currently plugged in, so I think that was pretty seamless. Yeah, I may need to put my camera sort of in the corner of the screen. The problem is it often blocks things that I want to show, so I'll try and... Again, I literally haven't had 5 minutes to figure things out in weeks. It has been pretty much full court press every day, 18 hours a day, continuously. Let's see here. Yeah, it's way over 5,000 acres. There's no way. It may be over 10. We'll see. I think it's probably close to 10 right now. All right, let me see. I'm going to quickly go through. You're going to see me hemming and hawing at the screen for a minute, and then I'll share mine again just to see what's going on. I'm just trying to, without toggling excessively, figure out what's going on. So there are new evacuation orders being issued. That's not a sign that there's an expectation the fire is under control, generally speaking. Obviously, it's not under control, but that's not a sign that they expect imminent improvement in the level of control, let's put it that way, of the rapidly expanding evacuation warning and order region. Okay, I'm going to bring back the live camera because it's rather dramatic. So, yeah, so, you know, there are firefighters obviously up along the road. You can see a couple, you can see one engine, a couple of hand crews, or at least hand crew vehicles. There's another engine. So clearly this fire is butting up against whatever this road is. I'm going to turn the audio on so we can get oriented.
A little bit, but how are you feeling just by being out there? You know your community very well, and you know the way the winds are in the canyon.
Okay, so they're interviewing somebody on the ground, which is they're probably not on the ground on this road because it looks like the fire crews are actually leaving this area. It's getting a little bit too hot. Not quite sure exactly where that is. So, okay, so that's back towards the heel of the fire, it looks like, not the forward flank. I think that's one of the MAFs, actually. So, looks like they got one. The temporarily outfitted military aircraft, ad hoc air tankers, outfitted with modular retardant bays. You can actually, I think you can kind of see that the numbers are on the plane are temporarily either painted or maybe even brightly colored, taped on there. Good old duct tape. I don't actually know if that's true, but it's sort of what it looks like. Most of the fixed-wing aircraft still that drop retardant are generally turboprop but there are a couple of, on unusual cases, there are a couple of jet aircraft. There was even a 747, the supertanker, but there was some complications with it. It was operated by a private company used on contract. It was very expensive and complicated to operate. Some question about how beneficial it was as well. It's not nearly as agile as smaller aircraft as you'd expect. I'm not sure it's available right now. There were some issues with it. I'm not sure that it's in the toolbox anymore. Somebody in the chat probably knows more about it than I do. So this thing is still cooking. It looks like they're gonna do a drop. It looks like well, maybe that's a little bit high for a drop. So actually maybe not yet. It's still very active along the flanks. I'm still sort of trying to what I'm trying to ascertain while I'm still in the session, and this might dictate sort of how I plan my evening, is whether or not this is west of the lake and or west of I-5. It still is unclear to me if it is. It's making a pretty aggressive push on the south end. We can't really see the north end. Let's see if Watch Duty has no additional information. Yeah, so that's definitely cooking. Let's see if we can get another camera view on the north side. That's really what I want to sort of see, if I can see. Because this should be looking... Alright. Well, let's see. So this should be looking right at where the fire would have jumped on the north end if it has jumped. I don't know. Something is burning very intensely in the plume. I don't really know which side of the lake that is on right now, honestly. This also should be sort of looking right there. Okay, this actually does give us a better view now. So you can see the aircraft zipping back and forth on the field. They're trying to catch this end. They're aggressively up, but it's jumping right ahead of that retardant. So see, did you literally, that's an interesting example. Watch right here, where the fire, there's going to be a water drop and then a retardant drop, and the fire just burns right through it. So this is continuing to back into the wind in this direction, and my concern is that it backs into the wind, makes a downslope run, and then hops over here, which these latest frames certainly don't dissuade me from thinking is still possible. Let's take a look from this side. This was the interesting mountain wave camera. It looks like they've zoomed the camera in. That gives us one view. Okay, here's the mountain wave camera again with the hydraulic jump at the end. Do we still have it? Let's see. So I think this side of the fire is actually where that intense plume is coming up. So, but yeah, there's still this little hydraulic jump. It's not quite as pronounced as earlier, but we're still seeing it. All right, let's go to the live camera, the live news footage again. Yeah, it's just kind of a mess right now out there. So all those canyons going up, the spot fires downwind. Well, let's take a look at watch duty again. I'm gonna see if there's any update on size. No. Those heat detections are not super helpful because some of them are clearly hot plume. Let's take a look at what the satellite looks like here. You're still probably getting a lot of smoke downwind right now. All right, so let me see. I'm gonna go back. You're gonna see my face again. Look at some comments. All right, folks. Okay, there's 3 maps, aircraft. The fire's coming on the south side of the lake. Okay, so there's confirmation that the 747 I mentioned is no longer available. Okay, there are also the DC-10s. That's true. Those are also jet aircraft. The maps are I think all of them are C-130s. I think that's correct. All right, so there's some other ones. There's some old MD-87. So these are all relatively old jets. So I think McDonnell Douglas back in the day. All right. Does anybody have specific information that the fire is west of the lake and or west of I-5? Because I know there are satellite heat detections west of the lake, but that does not actually mean the fire is west. As I was talking about earlier, that actually, in this case, I think at least initially was a hotspot detection of the smoke plume. VERS can over-detect, detecting the plume rather than, and so sometimes that can get detected. Okay, so no verification yet. This fire is getting close to whatever that facility is. So I do think that there are structures directly at risk at this point. That's pretty clear. I mean, we knew that from the evacuations, but right now it is looking like the flames are getting quite close to stuff that isn't vegetation. Some of which has better clearance than others. As I mentioned, I'm not so concerned about that water treatment plant, but that mobile home park is a whole different story, and all those vehicles or RVs, as the case may be. That's one of the MAF's aircraft, the C-130 coming in. I don't know if this is the actual drop run or a practice run. They're just lining up, but we might see it momentarily along this again, this is the southern flank. Okay, maybe not. Maybe they're returning from the run. I don't know. Again, this is active fire that's not doing anything particularly crazy right now. So it's it's active. It's sort of moderate rate of spread, not extreme. No wildfire behavior. We've seen episodes of much more extreme fire activity elsewhere on this fire at various times. This might just be due to topography and a local lull in the winds. It's still spotting aggressively downwind, and you can see that there's still significant wind based on the smoke. Of course, you zoom in and you can see that even a relatively moderate, you still get these fire whirls all along the flaming front, almost continuously. I mean, that is just what you see. Sorry, it's my face again on screen. There we go. Sorry. Well, you would have seen those little fire whirls. They're nothing too dramatic. I guess I was describing things that were not that dramatic, so perhaps it's for the best. You can see there's evacuation traffic. It's getting jammed up. Yeah, these wide shots. Trying to decide how to spend time this evening. I'll tell you what. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep a close eye on this evening. I may end this live stream soon, but this is a significant fire that's not just going to go away quickly like a lot of the other ones that have popped up and then quickly been extinguished in the past week. This one is already probably about 10,000 acres. We have worsening weather conditions overnight, so that is a major concern. And if this jumps I-5 and or the lake itself, it will make it into Ventura County and has a lot of room to spread to the west. So that is a major concern. The evacuations are being ordered accordingly right now. It hasn't yet done this. It'll be a pretty impressive catch if they can keep it east of I-5 or east of the lake, but it's possible, so we'll see if they do. My plan for tonight will be, if they do manage to keep this east of I-5, I probably won't have another live session because that means most of the big box mass evacuation scenarios are probably winding down. If it does make it west of I-5, I will have another live session later this evening, because that likely means this fire is going to affect a significant portion of Ventura County and threaten a lot of people. Right now, could go either way. Again, the winds are going to strengthen overnight, and they will lose the support of air tankers once the sun sets. So right now is actually the best conditions we're going to see for the next 12 hours, and it's still behaving pretty aggressively. So I'm not so sure they're going to catch this one. Maybe they will before it gets across. But my plan is, if they can keep it east of the 5, I'm done for the evening in terms of live sessions, but I'll follow up via social media. If they do not keep it east of the 5 and it starts to make progress into Ventura County, then I'm coming right back on later. If I do come back on later, it'll be in a separate live session. So this is okay. So this, I think, is one of the DC-10s. Yeah, that's the DC-10. One of the other jet aircraft tankers you're seeing on your screen. Smaller than a 747, of course, but still a 3 triple-engine jet aircraft. These ones can lay down a pretty long line of that bright red or pink fire retardant you'll see. So I'll keep it on screen when they do this, and then maybe I'll toggle somewhere else. That's my plan for tonight. So I may be coming back depending on what this fire does. I'll have to keep an eye on it. If you're in Santa Clarita area or anywhere along that I-5 corridor to the north of Santa Clarita, this is a direct threat. If you're in Ventura County or west of Santa Clarita in LA County, I would keep a close eye on this overnight, because things could change in either direction as the winds pick up or as resources continue to pour in. So it could genuinely go either way. We will see. Just trying to see if this has a better perspective. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take one more quick look at the questions, one more live view, and then I might call it a session unless something big happens in the next couple of minutes. So let's see what we got going on here. I can see I'm getting lower in my chair because I'm tired. All right. Yeah, the sound is probably because I was sitting a little bit too far away from the microphone. Sorry about that. Question of whether the Thomas Fire area will be at risk from this fire. Potentially, if it makes it west of I-5. Maybe it's 50-50 right now. I don't know. It could if it makes it west of I-5 and continues into Ventura County, the winds are such that it could make it into that vicinity. But that's a bigger if, because we don't know yet if it's going to establish west of I-5. We will see. If it does, that's my plan to come back later. If it does not, that's a better scenario, and I probably won't come back live tonight. Sounds like it still officially hasn't jumped I-5. Do you happen to know if the fire is west of the lake, though? Between the lake and I-5? In any substantial way? Since that would be a big question, because I-5 is a smaller fire break than the lake was. Man, okay, new vegetation fire reported in Running Springs. That is not a good spot. Let me see. All right, let's see. Okay, let me check watch duty again for the new fire, potentially. Not seeing anything on watch duty about a fire in Running Springs. Doesn't necessarily mean there isn't one, but I'm not currently seeing anything that's popped up on watch duty at this point, unless it's like within the past minute or two. Okay, so as a comment, there's some mixed people, people having issues with audio, some not. Maybe it's a connectivity issue on the user side. Hard for me to tell. There's one commenter reflecting that there's no units on scene yet in Running Springs, which is possibly why we don't see it on watch duty. This would be in reference to the new fire, the rumored new fire in Running Springs. I'll look again, see if that has popped up. Still don't see it, but again, usually it pops up once the first units are on scene, so it is possible that this is just, you're getting information via the Weather West YouTube live stream even faster than you would get, apparently in this case, on watch duty, or perhaps it's not a fire that's likely to pose a threat. I don't know yet. We'll see. No, somebody's saying there's a new fire called the Village Fire. Maybe... okay, but that's all the way down in San Diego County. There is a new one. Forward progress stopped, already not an issue, so that one's not a concern. Kind of just trying to see if this one in Running Springs starts to pop up as a real issue before I sign off this session. Officially, the fire is the Hughes Fire is now 8,100 acres, which still might be a slightly older estimate. But let me look at what the perimeter update is. Okay, they haven't updated the perimeter. Okay, so there's a lot of folks saying that they do not have any issues with audio, which probably means that it's coming through fine from me, and that this is probably an issue on the user side, so your own connection. Sorry. I would hate if it were the squirrels again. Okay, so I think I'm going to call it for now. I am going to see how this goes. I may come back later tonight if this makes much progress west of I-5. If it does not, I'll follow it on social media. Do keep in mind that red flag conditions re-emerge in high wind warnings tonight, so the weather will get worse in this area, and there still could be other fires later as the winds increase. We are not out of the woods yet, as I mentioned. Rain is now likely in Southern California. On Sunday, and maybe Monday as well, it won't be a tremendous amount of rain. It won't end fire season, but it will help with the current fires. It will bring the vegetation moisture up. It will give a reprieve to fire season for at least a week or so. There will also be a bit of a double-edged sword, risk of debris flows in and near the recent fire areas because there will be a chance of thunderstorms with locally very heavy downpours. So this will be beneficial for 95 to 98% of the region. In the remaining 1 to 2%, it could cause big problems potentially, and potentially life-threatening and dangerous debris flows if you're in the fire region. So I suspect that the Weather Service will issue a flash flood watch. In fact, there may be overlapping period on Thursday, perhaps, on which, or Friday, when there's a red flag warning and a flash flood watch for some of the same areas. as this unusually dry, warm, and windy pattern continues through Saturday before a pretty big change in the weather on Sunday toward much cooler, breezy, but much moister and probably somewhat rainy conditions. It won't last long, it won't end fire season on its own, but it will be a dramatic shift that will be beneficial in most respects, except for the risk of debris flows, which will be considerable because we do expect there to be some thunderstorm downpours around. I will definitely have another live stream before Friday. I'm going to try and have a new blog post. I may even be back on later tonight, depending on how this fire goes. So thank you, as always, and